think we're on.
Let's get started.
Welcome everyone to a Paratrooper and a Yogi walk into a bar. This is our weekly podcast with my now no longer in Israel chum, Shana Meyerson. We were in Jerusalem literally last week. You may have caught our first in-person show together. And then we went on a sort of round Israel tour of various podcasts, like 4 in a day. Including well into the wild West Bank, and that was kind of a fun outing. But now here we are. Shana's back in California. I'm back in the UK, and Shana, however, remains online at the Yoga of War podcast, and you can also find her and subscribe to her writing here on Substack.
Let me just say, it was amazing to see you at the Real Bar in Tel Aviv. And I can't wait for our next trip to Israel and see all the amazing collaborations we'll do next time. What a fabulous and fun trip. For anybody who doesn't know, and I can't imagine there's anybody who doesn't know, my co-host, Mr. Andrew Fox, the paratrooper of the pub. Next week, we'll be discussing his latest and greatest, unless the whole world changes again, Gaza report. This week, we're going to be talking about Iran. You can find Andrew as Mr. Andrew Fox here on Substack and also on X, as well as the co-host of the Brink Podcast.
Thank you very much. Well, today we're talking about Iran. Obviously, why wouldn't we talk about Iran? It's on everyone's, it's on some people's lips. And I think that's probably our first and most interesting, well, not most interesting, hopefully, but certainly our first interesting point to make is the deafening silence of the pro-Palestinian mob. And it's really interesting. They're not only being silent, but some of them are being actively against the protesters that are on the streets in cities and towns all across Iran. Or is it Iran for you? Do you do the same stupid thing you do with Iraq?
You know, it's sort of like, remember how it used to be Qatar and now it's Qatar?
Qatar.
Yeah, it used to be Iran, but now we sort of call it Iran to get
because it's
super
correct.
Authentic.
Good. You've moved from English simplified to English proper. So well done, America.
Thank you.
But yeah, remarkable lack of comment. And if you look at the death statistics from Iran right now, this comes with the proviso, of course, that it is incredibly difficult to count dead bodies in a conflict. And it kind of shows the lie of the Ministry of Health in Gaza and the nonsense they pushed out throughout the last 2 years, that the estimates in Iran right now range for anything from sort of 2,500 to 12, and I've even seen 20 thrown around. So, there's a huge span here. And the amount of people killed, if we take sort of the middle number there, so go for about 12. I know some pretty reliable people who've given me 12 as a figure. That's more in 2-3 days than the single bloodiest month in the Gaza war. So more people killed in 2 or 3 days than in the worst month in the fighting in Gaza. No protests on the streets apart from a few handful of Iranians. No screeching online permanently. No all eyes on Tehran. Nothing that comes similar to it. And it just shows you that these people were never really about human rights at all. They were about anti-Semitism. They were about condemning the world's only Jewish state. They were about pushing their own political agenda. And their counterpoint is, now you Israel people care about innocent dead civilians. You didn't for 2 years in Gaza. And it's like, no, we all did. Nobody wanted civilians in Gaza to die. Nobody did. I mean, maybe a few absolute extremist nutters did, but the 99% of people plus that I know feel that civilian deaths in Gaza were a tragedy. And that goes as far as IDF soldiers I know who fought in Gaza, who felt that civilian casualties were a tragedy. But these disingenuous buffoons, deliberately, of course, ignore the difference between tragic but legal collateral damage in a war versus opening fire on crowds of unarmed civilians with machine guns. And much as they've tried to accuse the IDF of that, there's no evidence of it whatsoever. So what the first part of this conflict or this uprising in Iran has shown us is the hideous double standards of these people who want nothing but to condemn the Jewish state, even at the expense of their own integrity.
Spot on. I just need to make one correction. You're using the word were, and the real word that we should be using is are. Even at the Golden Globes last week, or however many days ago, no mention of the massacre in Iran, but they're still talking about the genocide in Gaza, even months into the ceasefire. The double standards are amazing. But I do want to
Can I jump in? Can I just
Yes.
jump in before you go on to that? I've
Can.
literally, in the last half an hour, no less annoying. The last half an hour, I finished a book chapter sort of debunking the genocide nonsense. And I wrote my very studious 5,500 words and finished it off with a punchy last sentence. I was like, yeah, that's probably a good bit of work. And then I was like, do you know what? I wonder if the correct answer at this point is just to say shut up. Because it's so demonstrably not a genocide by any metric that it just devalues the term to even discuss it in those terms. And it's almost like we're going back to that saying about you don't accuse the Jew of theft because you believe he stole anything. You do it to make him turn out his pockets. This is just a kind of global pocket out turning. And I do just wonder by dignifying it, we give it seriousness that it doesn't deserve. And when someone goes, genocide, you just go, shut up. Just shut up.
This is
plainly
the ongoing
nonsense. I'm not dignifying you.
This is an ongoing debate, Andrew, because the flip side of that is just letting it go rampant like wildfire.
It's already rampant like wildfire.
Yes, but to have no pushback means that if there are some people there who care about the truth, that they will not get it. So I understand what you're saying, and this is a very, very long-running debate. Also, how everybody is taking the most anti-Semitic posts in the world and reposting, going, look what they're doing. I'm like, guys, every time you amplify it, YouTube or whomever finds out that you like it and they share it more. If you want to make a difference in this argument, you share things like, say, a paratrooper and a Yogi walk into a bar, not somebody punching a Jew in the face in New York. But getting back to the concept of the silence of the sheeple, which I think is perfect. I want to talk about just briefly that there's sort of two levels to the silence. One is, as you have already alluded to, the predictability of this, right? The double standards, as we say in the Jewish world, no Jews, no news, right? That's the simple low-hanging fruit. But so right now, the red-green alliance, right, we have to remember this isn't just a war on the Jews. This is a war on the West, right? It's a war on Western values. It's a war on Christianity, Judeo-Christian values, however you want to do it. And also, ironically, it is a war on the very freedoms that the Iranians are fighting for. This is the irony. We literally have all these entitled white girls trying on hijabs, and at the same time, the Iranian women are ripping them off at the risk of their lives, right? The irony and hypocrisy, there's no limits. There's no limits to how idiotic the useful idiots are. It knows no depths. So that's sort of the predictable part, okay? It's a war on the West. And as you said, some of them are actually defending the regime. How psychotic is that? But here's why I find the silence confounding. And that's because there are two parts of useful idiots, right? One is useful, but the other is idiots. These are not critical thinkers. I don't believe they have the mental depth to discern Iranians from other brown people in Gaza. That's where I find this weird. These uninformed masses, I think, would assume, I could be wrong. Obviously, I'm wrong, that Iranians would be, and when I say Iranians, I'm not talking about the regime, I'm talking about the people, would be the enemies of Israel because they are brown Muslims, right? And the enemy of the enemy is my friend. So this is where I don't really understand. All I can say is, once again, they are thrilling the Ayatollah with their silence, tacit support, and in some cases, explicit support, because it reduces pressure on the regime online and also gives him the opportunity to literally get away with murder for now.
Well, they obviously don't know the Middle East, because the saying there is that the enemy of my enemy is also my enemy. But that's one of the guiding principles of Middle Eastern analysis, which just shows their ignorance. But let's move on, because we have limited time tonight, unfortunately, because I've got to go and do something else. But I want to talk about the airstrike possibility from Trump. Now, I'm taking a sort of dual position on this. It's slightly contradictory, but let me explain it for you. So, in the first instance, Trump a week ago said we're locked and loaded. He said we're going to, deliver hell if they open fire on civilians. And now 12,000 people potentially are dead, and he's done nothing yet, apart from put tariffs on anyone trading with Iran and cancel some meetings. So that'll be reassurance for the protesters on the ground. Like if you make that promise and get people out on the streets with the promise that they'll be protected by you, then you owe them. So this is already long overdue, and there are a lot of deaths and potentially blood on Trump's hands, frankly, because there will be people who went out and protested because they thought they'd be okay, because America would come and help them out. So that's my first position, is that Trump needs to keep his promises, and if he doesn't, it's strategically incredibly damaging for America, because he's now been. I suspect what he did was his usual thing of shoot from the hip. And then his staff behind him are frantically trying to kind of make policy catch up with whatever the president said that day, and that's why we are where we are. So that's my kind of first position. The second position is I'm not entirely sure what will be achieved by strikes. Now, we had a great episode of the Brink yesterday with Kazra Arabi. Go have a look at that. He gave some really great stuff, and his take was that if you pick apart the kind of the headquarters of the IRGC and work your way down the chain and just bomb all of them, then that's very doable with minimal collateral damage. You can target the regime themselves, and that would decapitate it, and that's how you take the regime out. Okay, from a military perspective, not sure I agree with him on that one, because that is an awful lot of bombs. And of course, if you do decapitate and remove the regime, there's no guarantee that what comes next is necessarily any better. You could, in the very worst scenario, create this crazy civil war. You could end up with an IRGC general taking over and being just as bad, if not worse, as the Ayatollahs. There's no guarantee that just because the regime falls, Pahlavi's going to come in and everything's going to lead them to the sunlit uplands of liberal democracy. There's a lot of unknowns here. The other unknowns. What does Iran do when they look like they're about to fall? Do they take down everyone they can with them? Do they launch everything they've got at Israel and at Saudi and at the UAE? Do they start targeting American bases and just go banzai and fire off everything? Do they get their militias around the Middle East to rise up and fire stuff, even though they're weakened, but the Iraqi ones aren't particularly? There's lots of potentially negative things here. And, as a result, we're seeing lobbying from across the Gulf. And I wonder if including Israel as well, frankly, urging the White House not to conduct airstrikes. The Saudis will have their agenda. Having a democratic Iran doesn't particularly suit them. Free Iranian oil on the open market in due course, with lower oil prices worldwide, which is really bad news for Saudi, because they're already a bit weakened. They can't afford that oil barrel price to go any lower, especially now they're in this regional competition Trump has created by empowering Qatar and Turkey. The UAE seem very keen on an airstrike, probably for that reason exactly. It suits them to have that instability. Israel seems kind of 50-50, but they're keeping quiet and they're not taking part. They've already said that. Qatar are against it because they don't want that instability in the Gulf, and obviously they have a degree of fellow travelership with the Iranian regime. They're not best friends, but there are certainly directions in which they both move that are complementary on the extremism side of things. So it's a really politically fraught decision Trump has to make. But I go back to my initial point. Like, you put people on the streets saying you'd help them and you haven't. And that is a really appalling thing. So there you go. That's my contradictory position on airstrikes.
Okay, I'm going to try to unpack a lot of stuff there. Let's start with right now. I firmly believe this is a matter of timing, and it's when, not if. I think that Trump will absolutely come in to provide military support, but they have to really figure out the timing on this. That whether Israel will take a forward-facing, a front-facing position, I'm going to say no. If they do, then it just adds to the narrative that the Zionists are controlling the world, that the Zionists are controlling America. We know that they're helping. They're helping on the ground. They're helping with intelligence. But I think that it's time this time for big America to fight this fight and to not have to hide behind tiny Israel diplomatically, but also kinetically. Israel will be in a dire, I mean, they're going to be in a dire position either way. But if they take the lead on this or any obvious participation on the military front, Iran is going to unleash. Now, as far as timing is as far as the pressure, I also read that report that there are certain Israeli elements who are encouraging Trump not to go in right now. Again, timing is everything. We have to get to the brink, for lack of a better term, where the people are actually ready to step in and overthrow the government. Ultimately, it's going to be up to them. Perhaps the most amazing thing I read this morning, I assume you saw it, it looks like Netanyahu might have gone to Crete. Did you see this?
Well, they did say, they said it, they also announced it was a routine training flight. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did see that.
Whatever it is, the wings of Zion left Israel. It's now in Crete, which is sort of, I mean, it's what happened in the last strike, first of all. But second of all, we also know that the Ayatollah is in hiding. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of elements, maybe even Trump, are in safe spaces in order for things to unfold, however they're going to unfold. I do want to mention, you talked about everything, but I'm just going to mention briefly Qatar. Qatar right now, assuming that we are able to overthrow the Iranian regime, Qatar has this easy off-ramp right now to actually come to the Jedi light side if they so choose. I'm not saying that they are choosing. I am saying that they have an opportunity to separate themselves, an opportunity that they wouldn't normally have to separate themselves from sort of the broader terrorist regime should they decide to come clean. Of course, Turkey is another story. They're deeply entrenched on the dark side, and they are going to take full advantage if a power vacuum should ensue with the quote-unquote ring of fire. And
What's this piece with Qatar? I'm not following you on that one. How do they have an opportunity? And why would they take it given all of their previous behavior?
Because, okay, I've said a lot of times that we need to understand that we tend to think of Trump's support of Israel as fickle or shaky. Right? Like, how many times have we questioned whether he's a true friend of Israel? When, as far as I'm concerned, he's proven he is a true friend of Israel. Same thing can be said for anyone, including Qatar. If Qatar doesn't shape up, I don't think that Trump is 100% transactional.
What do you mean? Sorry, I'm really not following you. Shape up how?
By stopping to support terror.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. Why would they do that? Why would they suddenly reverse decades of policy?
Because Trump is giving them an option to become like a true ally of the United States and of the West. And we are seeing a global realignment of power, of the good and the evil. And Qatar's going to have to make a choice. I'm not saying they're going to. I'm saying that they have an opportunity to.
Okay. I don't see
I know
it,
you.
but
I can tell
crossed.
you. Yeah.
I'm very confused.
Again.
Very confused about that one, but okay.
Okay.
Let's go with it.
It's just my personal opinion that I think that there is a chance of brighter days ahead if Iran falls. I think there could be. But as far as like the people of Iran are concerned, keep in mind that we have reached a threshold that's never been reached before, where Iran has tried to just completely quash, whatever keyword you want to use, this revolution. Squish. And normally the people would have backed down by now that they're actually using, I don't know if this is true, unconfirmed machine gun fire against their own people. You would think that they would have backed down. They're not. Things that they...
Are they not? I've seen very different reports that things have lessened a bit. And, the videos
Really?
on the ground have really reduced as well, yeah.
I haven't heard that. All the news I'm getting, and we have to understand from everything that we're getting very spotty news. You're probably getting more accurate than I am. I haven't seen that. But this is the moment United States, Trump is going to have to step in. But here are the benefits that Iran will have by making peace with the West, and particularly with Israel. Israel has the water tech that can save Iran from their water crisis. Electricity would be restored, and in U.S. would take away the sanctions that, honestly, this whole thing started out as an economic revolution by the bizarre merchants because of the severe deflation of the real. So I think that it's a matter of timing. I think the U.S. will go in. And also, I want to say, based on the piece that you wrote last week, it's time for the U.S. to maintain a permanent carrier in the Middle East until stability is restored.
Yeah, there's no doubt that I think that a lack of a carrier is going to make things a bit more difficult. For example, Saudi have said that they can't use Saudi Arabian airspace if they want to attack Iran, which makes life a little bit more challenging, should we say?
Wait, they said that to the United States?
Yeah, you can't use Saudi airspace if you want to attack Iran. That came out about an hour ago, maybe.
Wow, what was their justification for that?
They don't want it to happen, so they won't open Saudi airspace.
Okay.
Yeah, so that cuts options slightly. So yeah, there's obviously a huge lobbying piece against this. I think JD Vance is lobbying hard against it as well by all reports. We've seen Tucker Carlson visiting the White House. Qatar are against it. Saudis against it. Mr. Trump is facing a lot of pressure. But then again, in the last hour or so, Iran released a video or a picture of the assassination of Trump, the attempt, saying next time we won't miss, or something similar. So it's interesting that the Iranians are goading Trump like that, because it suggests that they're either very confident or they kind of want an airstrike to happen because they think they'll get something out of it in terms of being able to pull the country together because they're under attack from the West. So it's really interesting. It's politically incredibly balanced and incredibly nuanced, as I wrote the other day. Mm-hmm. I genuinely am still not following that Qatar piece a minute ago. That Qatar spent billions and billions of riyals, dinars, yeah, whatever the currency is, to buy the influence they've got. They've been boosted by Trump to a position of influence in the Middle East they would have never expected. It's gone, the Gaza war has gone better for that. They are the main winner from the Gaza war, quite frankly, in terms of how they've been boosted. They're now on the ascendant. They've got, Al Jazeera. They've got their paid influencers. They've got their paid universities and paid academics. They're in a fantastic place to achieve their Muslim Brotherhood goals. So I cannot see any conceivable circumstance in which Qatar stops what it's doing and changes direction.
They're being more and more exposed, and Trump is naming more arms of the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist states, and Trump is not going to be in power forever. So this is an ongoing theme that we've got 3 years left, and including next year is 2026 already, that we're going to have midterm elections that could change everything. So we've got a short window. Huh?
Please, Lord, let the impeachments begin as soon as those midterms are over.
Okay, so I'm gonna just leave that one. But in the meantime, we do have to understand that even if Trump is transactional, he's not going to be in the White House forever. Qatar is being exposed more and more. We're seeing it all the time now, at least in the media that I'm reading over here. And at some point, all these organizations are going to have to come clean.
I think that's optimistic, but I hope you're right.
Nobody's ever accused me of being an optimist before.
So yeah, there we go. So yeah, what else?
Yeah, I want to talk about these public executions. Do we know what happened with Irfan Sultani? Do we know he was scheduled for execution without trial today? Do we know what happened?
I saw a tweet saying that he had been executed, but I haven't had any verification of that whatsoever. So,
okay. And one thing that's so interesting, Andrew, is that so many of the broadcast networks are saying that they can't report on what's going on in Iran because of the internet blackout that they don't have on the ground reporting. And yet in Gaza, they had no problem taking the word of the health ministry and other Hamas affiliated department.
They're not affiliated. They're not affiliated. They are Hamas.
Well, yeah,
Let's
Hamas.
be clear. They
Sorry,
have
I
no
don't mean
problem
affiliated.
taking the word of the psychotic, murderous, rapist terror group.
That
they have no problem with that whatsoever. And yet with Iran, oh no, we couldn't possibly confirm anything. It's astonishing.
Yeah. It is astonishing. And I mean, going back to the fact that what you said, the fact that I think CBS said up to 25,000. So we could go with 12. It doesn't matter the number. We're talking about 2 weeks. We're talking, if we want to talk about just sheer numbers. And these protests, so far as I can tell, and again, like we do have limited reporting, look entirely peaceful. It looks like people walking in streets with like cameras, like lights on their cell phone to show that they're walking in streets. This is not like terrorists attacking and needing to be put back in their place and to be gunned down by machine guns. Like hello, like how do we awaken the world to reality? At this point, I feel like we're watching like some very, very weird dystopian broad comedy where nothing makes sense anymore, and funny not funny is the word of the day. I read the headlines and I'm like, this can't be real. What world are we living in right now?
Yeah, and I've noticed some headlines are just repeating the 2,500 that the Iranian regime have admitted to. And they're just running with that as the headline, even like the Telegraph in the UK, which is really interesting. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to talk a little bit about one of my little areas of academic expertise, and that is the information space.
Yes.
It's been fascinating objectively for the last sort of week or so, seeing both sides going at it in the information warfare space. You've got very clearly accounts that I know, I'm not going to put any names on them, but accounts that I know to be slightly UAE funded, certainly Israeli funded, breathlessly pushing these protests. And they were almost hysteria driven when all the reporting we had said that they were at that time half the size of the ones from the November 22 protests. So they were still quite small, and they were breathless being pushed by these accounts as the biggest thing that's ever happened in Iran. That's it. The regime's definitely going to fall. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And also knowing the affiliation of these accounts, they were clearly trying to have an information effect on Washington because that's the space they operate in. So that was really objectively very interesting to see that happen. And then you've got the other side, which is a split between total blackout, just ignore it completely, or try, deny, or minimize. And then you've got the tiny minority who are just a rabid, obviously Iranian paid people like David Miller. And well, I'm not saying David's obviously Iranian paid, but he certainly operates in a space that is tangential to that. Just to make sure we don't get sued, to be very clear. That kind of side of the house it's almost the opposite of 7th October on the Israeli side, where they've been taken aback by it. They've almost been kind of "Ooh," and it took them a few days to respond because they were caught off guard. But now their narrative has firmed up as well. It's the Mossad CIA regime change playbook. That was one I saw earlier. That was Sachs threatening. You've got the Iranian regime pushing that this is an outside power driven insurgency. The regime's been calling on loyalists to get out on the streets and protest in favour of the regime. And that narrative is now kind of set in stone. So you've got the two things. But I thought, and don't get me wrong, the guys who are trying to push regime change are kind of, I don't necessarily support their methods, but I support their sentiment, shall we say. I don't necessarily agree on how they went about it, but I agree with the regime should go. But yeah, just as an observer of these things, I think it just shows you that everything is different after Gaza, and it's given us a new method that people are going to try and manipulate information online.
There have been some pretty strong loyalist counter protests also, which has been interesting to me. They say that only 15% support the regime, but I think that when the regime says jump, their loyalists say how high. Waiting for some IRGC to defect. There was a video online, I think this morning, or we're on different time zones. I saw it this morning of a supposed IRGC military person claiming that they are ready to defect. So we'll see if that turns even a significant portion of the military. That will certainly make a big difference. I do want to ask you. I know we have very limited time, Andrew, but what is your opinion on NATO? I mean, why is this all America and plus Israeli support and intelligence, wherein NATO doesn't seem to think that Iran is a threat to the Western world? Like why aren't they concerned and or taking part? I mean, this goes back to Trump's whole thing. Like, okay, fine. So he got them to pay more into it. What are they actually going to do about it? This is their fight.
America's in NATO, so NATO is involved. Let's not forget that technically they're in NATO, even though they're terrible members. And also, look, NATO doesn't have any power to strike here. That's the point. There's no legal power by which these airstrikes can take place. Only Trump is prepared to just chin off international law and do it. There are two reasons you can open fire under international law. One is self-defense, and the other is if you're invited in by the sovereign government of the country. Neither of those things apply here. There's no legal standing whatsoever for Western airstrikes in Iran. Israel had clear self-defense when they went in last summer. America has no legal standing to bomb Iran whatsoever. It would be a completely illegal action. And I'm not a huge fan of international law. I think it only applies in so much as people agree to adhere to it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Western governments still think it's a thing and a good thing, and they will adhere to that. So there's no legal standing. The only slight exception to that is something called R2P, responsibility to protect, which came about from the 1990s and the Yugoslav civil war and all the kind of wars that came off the back of that, where NATO did go in and bomb. However, that is widely condemned as having been an illegal action. And I don't think RTP survived beyond sort of 1999. And I think it's in the historical dustbin.
Well, this seems... Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and it was chinned off. It was chinned off again in Libya 2000. What was that? 11, maybe 13. I forget. The Libya operation to depose Gaddafi. There were no legal grounds for that either. That was under RTP, and it went so disastrously wrong that I think that has put people off for good. And like I said, the main deterrence for me, personally, is that we don't know what comes after the airstrikes, and it could be chaos. It could be missile strikes on Jerusalem and Tel Aviv or whatever. It could be far, far worse than actually what we're seeing on the ground now, which is what my reservation about airstrikes is. It's not quite as simple as saying we'll go in and bomb the regime out of power, because that's not guaranteed, and we don't know what will come next.
Yeah. I just want to say that, first of all, we both know that international law is ridiculous, but what you're saying to me sounds like a bit of post-World War II, that the false thought that we live in a post-war era, which you and I had discussed actually when we were together. The problem, Andrew, is that if I were to extend that argument, then the Allies would have no real reason to go in and take out Hitler, for example. Like we're talking. Well, Andrew, Andrew, hold on. We're talking about the number one state sponsor of terror, and it may not be as direct, but they are threatening literally the entire global stability. This isn't just about Israel. Iran is a threat to world stability. They are the biggest threat to world stability.
Self-defense law and the international, it's the Caroline test. People can go away and Google that. The threat has to be imminent and immediate, and the response has to be proportionate. So there is literally no standing under international law under which we can legally strike Iran. I don't particularly care, and if they do go and strike Iran, I'll be quite happy about it. But I'm just explaining how our governments think. And of course, we could have done World War II because we were attacked by Germany. But anyway.
But America wasn't. This was pre-NATO.
Yeah, but we had defense alliances and stuff. So still had.
Yeah. I just think that the whole world really and the whole global order is threatened right now by Iran, and it's imminent. And the other thing is that this is the moment. We're not going to have this moment again. If the regime is successful in putting down this protest, coup, whatever you want to call it, I don't see us having this opportunity again. So I think.
Well, I disagree. I think it makes it more likely that it'll happen again. I don't think this is necessarily the moment because we've seen ever increasing protests in Iran over the last 4 years. Each one gets bigger. The Iranian government gets weaker with each one, and the Iranian people, frankly, have been on the wrong end of violence before as well, and they don't appear inclined to back down because what have they got to lose at this point? There's no water, there's no power. They don't have. I think the Iranian government were charging people money to have to recover the bodies of their loved ones, and it was about $3,000, and it was 2 billion.
Wow.
2 billion real. So that's how bad inflation is. Like, what have you got to lose at this point? So, I think we will have the chance again if this time doesn't come off. I would just.
Yeah,
but it's not easy. It's not simple, and there's no easy answer here. There's no quick fix button, silver bullet that Trump can fire that would guarantee a good solution. So it's, as ever, incredibly complex. No easy answer.
Yeah. I know you have to go, but I just want to put in one sentence that this is the first time they're receiving, hopefully, something other than moral support from the West. So I do think that if we step in militarily, that this is our best moment ever. And if Pahlavi can be installed, I think that we're looking at a new world order.
Interesting. I don't agree even slightly with that last sentence, but maybe a new Middle East at best.
You don't think the Middle East affects the world order?
Not in the same way, not in a kind of decisive manner, I wouldn't suggest. But anyway, I do need to bounce. So thank you very much for coming, everyone. Sorry it was a little bit rushed tonight, but such is the diary of two busy people. We will be back next week. We'll try and get back on our normal schedule. Please do like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube afterwards. If you're watching it on Substack, please go follow Shana and give me a follow as well. And thank you very much for watching.
And I just want to add that Ron Gvili is still not home. Please do not forget him. Wear your ribbons to remind yourself each day and to remind other people that we have to get him home. And like, comment, subscribe, share, do the things. And l'chaim, Andrew. I'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Bye.